This tutorial is going to talk you through how to make your own hip-hop track using Garageband or Logic Pro. Your version of the program might look a tiny bit different to mine, but all the stuff that you're going to access is going to be the same, even if some of the options look a tiny bit different. So in this first screen, when you're making a new project, a new empty project, you're then going to choose what track you're going to have, and you're looking for the one that says software instrument in some way, and then press create, and now you'll add a new electronic instrument, which by default is the electric piano. We're going to start with some drums. So I'm going to click on electronic drum kit, and then I'm going to choose one of these loops here. Now there's loads of them. These are the drum instrument parts. So I'm going to choose any one to start off with. Let's go with that one because I can always change it later. And then I'm going to make my own loop here. I'm going to create a new loop where I can add some drum sounds. So there's a few different ways of doing it. You can right click and press create MIDI region. If you don't have a right click on your mouse, then control and click will bring up the same menu. Or you can use the command key, and the command key has got the letter CMD in it on your keyboard. And if you hold it, it turns your mouse into a little pencil like this. So I'm going to hold command to get my little pencil and then click, and then I've got my new green loop. The same thing would happen if I'd have pressed create MIDI region with my right click. So I've got my green loop, and that's where I'm going to put my drum sounds. To access the drum sounds, I need to double click on it. And then I'll get this panel up at the bottom here. And this panel gives me all the notes I need. I'm quite zoomed in at the moment, so I'm going to use the zoom controls, which are just over here on the right hand side. I'm going to zoom out a bit. There we go. And zoom out so you can see what yours will look a bit like. On the left hand side, you'll see the piano keyboard with different numbers C, with different numbers to show whether they're higher or low. And the lowest one is C1. So if I click on some of these, there we go. I hear loads of different drum sounds. And C1 is what we call the kick drum. That's that really low, there we go, kick sound. And that's going to be my starting point. So I'm just going to zoom in a tiny bit more actually, so I can actually see what they are. Because if you zoom in on a drum kit with the zoom control, there we go. If you zoom in enough, you actually get the names of the drums, which is quite useful. So I'm going to put a kick drum on beat 1. And to do that, I'm going to use the command key on the keyboard. That's that CMD key again. And if I hold it, it makes my mouse into a pencil, which is what I want to draw a beat. So I'm going to draw. There we go. Oh, it came in really small. Let me just resize that. There we go. I'm going to draw a kick drum on beat 1. Lovely. I'm then going to put a snare drum in the middle of my bar of this green area here. And a snare drum is just above it on the next white note. You can see that one there. There's another one here actually. So you can choose which one you like. I'm going to go for this one. And I'm going to put it right in the middle on numbers 1, 3. That means bar 1, beat 3. That's where we want to put it, right in the middle. So I'm going to, again, hold my command key to get my pencil tool and click to get my beat in. So I've got a kick and a snare. Very simple. Let's have a little listen to it. I'm just going to loop that part by going to the top right-hand corner of my green loop here in my arrange window, and you can see it comes up with this little loop the loop mouse section. So I'm going to click and drag, and there we go. I've got a repeating pattern. Let's hear my drums, nice and simple. Okay, very simple, but there's my starting point. Another thing I've done on my track that you will have to do if you're starting a new one is by default, it comes in at 120 BPM. So at the top, the tempo here, measured in BPM, beats per minute, will say 120. We want to make it a tiny bit faster, so double click on yours and type in 140. That will give you a good speed for this style of music. Okay, back to my loop. I've got my kick and my snare. Let's add in some hi-hats. That's going to be the next most important part. So looking at the keyboard, the note that would be F sharp is this one here. It is after the first group of 2. It's the first one on the group of 3. And if I'm zoomed in enough, I can actually see the name hi-hat 1. So I've got that, and it sounds like that really short cymbal sound that was really important on the drum kit. So to put in hi-hats, I'm going to again use my command key, but rather than putting them really nice and spaced out on as these two are, I'm going to put loads of them in, and I'm going to put them almost randomly along this dark line all the way up until number 2. I'm not going to go past that because then I start changing the other loops. So let's go for it. I'm just going to dot in a couple. I'm not going to think about it too much. I'm just going to put some stuff in and see what that sounds like. Okay, now I've done it. Let's have a listen and see if it works. Let's press play. Yeah, I think that's working quite nicely actually, as a starting point for my drum beat. So you can put in as many hi-hats as you like, but remember to leave some gaps too. Now you've got the basic beat with your kick and your snare and your hi-hats. You can then customize it. So you might decide to add in another one of these sounds. So maybe I'm going to put, for example, a new kick drum here. There we go, I'm just going to add another one in. You wouldn't want too many or it's going to sound a bit too busy. So you've got to be careful not to overdo this drum part or you will struggle to get anything else on top of it. But I'm going to add in one more kick drum. Could add in another snare drum, or I could listen to what the other sounds are on this kit and see if there's anything else I want to add in. There's a little sort of beep sound there. I quite like that clap sound, so I'm going to try and add in the clap sound, I think, maybe just here. Okay, and then let's see what that sounds like. This is all about experimenting. Add something, listen to it. If you like it, keep it. If not, delete it. Let's see what it sounds like with those two new bits added. Yeah, that's pretty good. I think that clap's a bit loud, to be honest. So the other thing I'm going to do you see on the side here, there's a velocity. That's the volume. So I'm just going to turn down that clap a little bit, draw that down, and let's see what that sounds like. Yeah, I think that's working. So there's the start point of my drum beats. Now I'm just going to show you one more little thing, because in this style of music, one of the things that they often do is some really quick hi-hats. So quicker than you can actually put in here. So I want to take one of them, let's say this last one here, and rather than being one square that fills the whole area where I'm able to put them, I want to put in a whole load of them, and you'll see that that is a sound often used in this style. So to do it, I'm going to zoom right in. Top right hand corner over here, I'm going to zoom right in, zoom until I can see nice and big my hi-hat sound, and I'm just going to resize it. So just click and dragging from the corner to make it nice and small, and then I want to fill up this space with some more tiny ones. So I've got my pencil tool. It doesn't actually work if you just try and draw them in directly, unfortunately, but what seems to work is if you draw them into the one above. So I'm just going to draw it there and then drag it down. There we go. I'm just going to do this a few times. Don't worry too much about the spacing, but roughly even. There we go. And I'm just going to fill up that section. And then what you'll hear when I play it is hopefully some really fast hi-hats in a row. Let's see what it sounds like. There you go. To be honest, I think those are maybe even too fast. So I might get rid of a couple and spread them out a tiny bit more. Let's go for, rather than quite that many, let's try spreading them out a little bit and getting a bit more space between them, but having the same effect, hopefully. There we go. I went in too quick on those. But you can see the effect it's trying to make of a really fast flurry of hi-hats. Let's hear that now. Here we go. Yeah, there we go. And so you could add those in more. You could put some of them in just before the beat. You could put them in at various different points. I might just add in a couple more there in the beat before as well. There we go. So I've got some ideas now for my drum part. So let's just have a listen to it one more time. Great, so there's going to be the basic drum beat for my song, and we'll look at doing some different versions of that drums later. Now the next thing I'm going to add in on top of it is going to be my chords part. So I'm going to press add a new track. That add a new track button, by the way, was the plus button just to the left of where your instruments are. And I'm going to choose a MIDI track. There we go. So same as I did before. Oh, I should say, by the way, before we start creating this track, if you like your drums, that's great. But if you want to hear what your drums sound like on a different instrument, on the left-hand side over here, you can actually click a different button. For example, let's say instead of the one called Absolute Zero, I want to try this After Party and see what that sounds like. It'll keep the same pattern, but it'll be see what it sounds like on a new instrument. Sounds okay. You can try another one. And they'll all sound slightly different, so find one that you like. I'm going to stick with the one I had actually. All right, where were we? I made a new track. I pressed the plus button to create a new instrument, and it comes up as this electric piano. I'm going to go for just a normal piano actually. So on the left-hand side, I'm going to choose piano and then choose just the normal grand piano. So I've got a piano sound now. Now, instead of drawing these parts in using the mouse, I can actually play these on my piano keyboard on the computer. If you've got a piano keyboard plugged in, that's fantastic. If not, you can go up to the window menu at the top and choose musical typing, and then you'll actually get a keyboard that you can play on your computer keyboard. So for this, I'm going to try and play in a pattern of chords. Okay, now a chord is more than one note at the same time. So this note here, it says H because it's on the key H, but it's actually the musical note A. If I were to play that note, then miss one, play the next one, then then miss one, play the next one. There we go. That is a chord, because chords are play one, miss one, play one, miss one, play one. And if I play that anywhere on the keyboard, it will make different chord sounds. So I'm going to do that. Now I've actually got a piano keyboard plugged into my keyboard, so I'm going to try and play in a pattern of chords. And in this style of music, you don't need loads of chords. What can sound really good is maybe a couple of times on one chord and then moving to another one maybe. So I've started with the A chord. That's quite a nice one to start with. It's a minor chord, so it sounds quite dark, which is good for this style, and lots of things are going to work with it. So I'm going to start with the A chord, which sounds like this. There we go. I just played it on my keyboard, and see what that sounds like along with my drums. Here we go. Yeah, I think that could work, but maybe I don't want to just play it once. Maybe I want to play it a couple of times. Let's try doing it, and this time I'm going to play it a couple of times, trying to keep in time with my drums. Here we go. There we go, that sounds good. I'm actually going to add in another chord as well though. Instead of just staying on the A chord, I'm going to go, and then I'm going to move to a different chord. I quite like that. I've just moved to the E chord. I thought that might work quite well, but you can try any one. So I'm going to go A, and then E. So I've just got two chords, but I'm going to try and play it in time to my drums. Let's try it. Here we go. I think that could work. So when you've had a little experiment and you've tried composing some chords, any pattern you like, but keep it short and simple, the next step is to record it. So at the top of the screen, I've got this red record button, and when I press it, anything I play is going to be recorded into the program. I only need to do it once, because then I can loop it. So let's hit record, and let's try recording in my chord sequence. Here we go. Get a little count in. Then my drums start. Here we go. That'll do. There we go. There's my drum part. Now, if I'd have gone a bit wrong, I could delete it. I could try again, whatever, but I think that'll do. I can see the notes I played down the bottom. And then the last thing I'm going to try is to make sure everything's really nicely in time, because when we play things in using the keyboard, we are human beings, not robots. So we always might be a tiny bit early or a tiny bit late. And can you see that some of mine are just off the grid lines? They're like just before or just after. So you can actually drag these onto the grid lines to make the timing perfect, like this. So I could go drag them onto here, for example, and that would be fine. Or the other way of doing it is you can press the little Q button just up here. So if I go, I'm going to select them all, drag a box around them, press the little Q, and that will get them exactly on the grid lines. You can see that's like locked them exactly there. Now it might be wrong. It might have put them on the wrong line. So I'm going to listen and see if that sounds right. So let's try it. Here we go. And didn't sound quite right, was it? I think I moved this one to the wrong one, didn't it? I'm going to move it over. There we go. I think that's meant to be on that line. Let's try it again. And this one here sounds a bit early as well, so I think it's gone to the wrong line. I'm just going to move them over. Let's try it again. That sounds better. Lovely. So I've got my chord part. I'm going to loop it by going to the top right hand corner just here and then click and drag. So I've got a repeating pattern. The other thing I just want to show you is that when I made that loop, I made it so it finishes exactly on a bar line, which is bar 5 here. If I hadn't done that, if I'd have done it say here and just done it in like a random place, then it wouldn't have looped properly. It would sound a bit more like this. Sounds a little bit muddled. It might work, but it sounds a little bit muddled. So I want to make sure it's exactly on one of these numbers. So I'm going to let it finish on bar 5. Actually, in mine, there's a bit of space, but I think that's fine. I think that's going to work. So I have it start and end exactly on the bar lines. Then I'm going to loop it. Final thing I'm just going to show you with this chord part is I just used a piano, and pianos can sound really good in this style, but you can use any instrument you like. You could use a guitar, you could use like one of the mallet instruments. The synthesizer instruments are quite good, and ones that I quite like. The classics menu has loads of good ones that could work for the chords. I quite like the menu called plucked as well. There's loads of things here that can actually sound quite nice with a plucked with the chord part. So I'm going to choose one of them, and let's just see what it sounds like if I have the same loop I recorded but on a different instrument. Here we go. Bit high pitched that one. Let's try another one. Sounds quite good. I'll just try a few. And you can kind of keep going until you find one that you like the sound of. I quite liked it. I quite like that actually, as maybe the chord part, but you can have a play around and find the instrument that works best for you. All right, next up, we're going to add our bass. So to add a bass sound, we're going to use the plus button to create a new track. Let's do that now. I will get the option of what to add in, and again I'm going to choose the MIDI sound, the software instrument just here, press create, and now I've got my new track, which again is a classic electric piano, but I'm going to change it now to a bass sound. Now I don't want to go into the bass menu because this is all like bass guitars. This is kind of a bit better for kind of like rock and sort of live instrument stuff. I want mine to sound really electronic, so I'm going to use the synthesizer section and the bass section here. Now there's loads of good ones in here. There's lots of ones that you can use well. The ones that work particularly well for this style, there's a really good one in the synthesizer bass section, if you go all the way down to the bottom, called trap bass, which being that is a sort of style of the sort of style of music I'm creating here, the trap bass works really well. So have a look at trap bass, which I've just selected here. If you don't have that one, there's a few others. Anything that has like a sub bass will work really well as well, or any of the like 808 basses are good too. So the trap bass sounds a bit like this. I'm going to now go back to my piano keyboard, but this time I'm going to play low on the keyboard. My chords were kind of in the middle, but if I play low on my keyboard, I'll get a sound like this. There we go. That was me playing a few different notes on the keyboard, and you can hear it creates this really nice low sound, which is going to work well for my track. Now, I've got to think about, when I'm adding my bass, what note I'm going to play. Because if I just play random notes on the keyboard, it's not going to fit with the chords I've already got. So think about what chords you played. I played A 3 times, and then I played the chord of E. So because I've played the A chord quite a lot, I'm going to start with my A note on my bass. And you can make a bass line with just one note. Like I could do it a couple of times like this. That was just me playing the note A, but it can create a really nice kind of deep sound. I can go on different A's, so I could go from a high A to a low A like this. And that can be a nice effect as well. I'm going to try and come up with a little bass line here. It's going to use mainly the note A, but I might add in a few extra notes at the end. So I might go something like an A, some of the notes A. And then what sometimes these bass lines have is they'll have a fast bit right at the end of the loop. So something like this. There we go. And I just played a couple of different notes there. I actually went from A to E because that was the next note I played in my chords part. Let's see if it works with the track anyway. Let's press record and see. So the idea is I've got some bass notes, some nice low, simple bass notes, and then maybe a quick bit at the end, which is particularly popular in this style. Let's do it. Here we go. I'm going to press record and record in my parts. Ready? Here we go. There we go. And I'm only doing it once because I can then loop it. And you can see that when I stopped it, I made sure that it finishes exactly on number 5. I don't want it like this with like a big gap at the start or the end. I want to make sure that everything is happening exactly on those bar lines to keep my timing correct. Now let's have a look at the notes I played. I can see now, whoops, that my first note was a little bit before the beat. And there's a few that are slightly in the wrong place. And also, when I played this little fast bit at the end, I accidentally hit the wrong note there. So let's get rid of my wrong note. Click on it and press delete. There we go. Now I'm going to select the others. There we go. And then I'm going to press that Q button again, which should get them exactly all on the grid lines. Let's have a listen and see if that sounds good. I'll just make sure this start bit is right on the grid line by resizing from the bottom. Okay, let's hear it. And in fact, you know what? I'm going to loop it. There we go. Let's repeat it over and over again. And let's see what it sounds like. Here we go. There you go. I think that's working quite nicely. So I've got chords, I've got drums, and I've got a bass line. And as I was going, I'm just adjusting the volumes here on the left-hand side. These sliders turn things up and down, and that can be good to try and create a nice balance. Okay, next step. Let's add a new track, and now let's add on a riff. Press plus. New software instrument, press create. Now a riff is basically a short repeating melody. It's a short repeating tune, and it's played usually higher on the keyboard. The bass is low, the chords are in the middle, and the riff's usually somewhere towards the top. You can use any instrument you like for the riff. The electric piano that we heard at the start can work quite nicely. There's loads of good synthesizers. If you look in the lead section, there's a ton of nice synthesizers there. The plucked section's really good as well. The classic section's really good. Even the bell section might be quite good for these. So you can just have a little experiment. If you choose an instrument and then play the keyboard, you'll see what it sounds like. I'm actually just going to use a piano for mine because there's quite commonly a simple piano lead in this style of music. So just a simple slow piano melody can work really well. So I've got my sound selected. I've found the higher notes. I might even go, there we go, even higher than that. And then I'm going to make up my tune. Now, what makes a good riff is something really, really simple. We want it to be memorable. We want it to be catchy. We don't want it to be hundreds of notes, short and simple. And to make sure it fits with everything else, it's quite a good idea to start with a note from my first chord. So I played in the chord of A, C and E, which is the A chord. There we go, A, C, E and E, which sounds like that. So I'm going to choose one of those notes. Maybe I'm going to start with C, and I'm going to try and come up with a little short tune, and it might be something like this. That could work. So all I did there was I went the C and then E and then I went to the A, and then I did this little bit where I went D, E. So I've only used 4 keys on the keyboard there, but I'm trying to come up with something nice and slow that could be a nice catchy little tune on top. And you can experiment and try. Maybe yours will have a few quicker notes, maybe it'll be more complicated, or maybe it'll be even more simple, just using a couple of notes like this. Really doesn't need to be complicated. Let's see if it works with my track though. That's the most important thing. I'm going to press play, and then in time with my drums, I'm going to try and play in that loop. Here we go. I think that could work. So let's record it. I'm going to press the red record button and play in that little thing that I just did. Here we go. There you go, that's all I need. I've done it. I can see my notes at the bottom here. Let's quantize them again using this Q button so they're right and in time. I'm going to select them, press Q, and then let's loop my part. Again, I've just made sure it finishes exactly on the grid line there, exactly on number 5, exactly on number 3. And then let's go to the top right hand corner, click and drag, and then let's see what it sounds like. Here we go. There we go. So that's kind of like the basic outline for my main beat, which is drums, chords, bass and riff. So the next thing we can do is we're going to add some more stuff to that, but let's now get some lyrics in there. Okay, so now might be a good place for me to actually record my lyrics. So to record into Logic, you can add a new track again. So top left hand corner up here where you've got your plus button, but instead of choosing software instrument where you play something in, you can choose audio, which allows you to plug in a microphone. And if you press create, you've now got an audio track. And if you plug a microphone into your computer or use the computer's inbuilt microphone, you will see, just like there is on mine, some sounds coming in, and I can see that green line going up and down to show that I've got sound coming into the computer. So I can press this little R, this red R here, and then that'll be flashing. That's basically like the record light. It says record enable. It means yes, we're ready to record. So once that's flashing, if I press the record button at the top here, it'll actually record my voice into Logic. So I can listen to my track in my headphones so I can stay in time, and then perform the rap I've written on top of my track. So I'll just show you how that could go. And now if I talk, 1, 2, 1, there we go. All right. So hopefully that's recorded. Let's just have a listen. 1, 2, 1, there we go. All right. There you go, it worked. So that's how you record your voice. So you can do that and record in your rap part. Now, I'm going to give you, here's one I made earlier, although actually I've borrowed it from the rapper Little Sims, who's great. And I've got part of her song that she's done a song called Control, which I'm going to take a little bit of there. I've got just the vocal part, just to demonstrate how a great rap part could sound over the beat that I've created. So let's have a listen what that will sound like. Here we go.
Under control, I control. Here's for me to behold. You give me ocean and reason to moan. I'll give you passion and keys to my soul. Which pleases you most? Lying to self is easy for most. The next morning, looked at me, smile with a glare in his eye. There's a limit on the time that we share in this life.
There we go. That's working really nicely. So I've now got that could be my finished track. I've got all the different parts and I've got some words in there. And obviously, if I wanted to re-record my vocals and do it a few times, then I absolutely could. But at this stage, now we've got our main bits in our track, we want to really think about variation, because if my song is just the same all the way through, it's going to get a little bit boring. So at this stage, I'm going to try adding some variation into some of my parts. And the easiest way to do that, first of all, is have things drop in and out. So maybe I'm going to have my piano melody not coming in straight away. Maybe it's going to start actually with just the chords. Then maybe the drums are going to come in. There we go. And can you see, as I'm moving these things around, I'm dragging them from the first version. So you can't drag them from here. Oh, I can actually, but it's easier and it's probably better to try dragging it from the first version of the loop. And I'm not going to put it there. Okay, because that's not exactly on one of the numbers. I really want everything to start and end exactly on the numbers. Otherwise, my timing kind of goes out the window. So I'm going to click and drag that one. Let's have it happening exactly on number 5. Maybe then I'll have my bass happening exactly on number 7. And then maybe my piano coming in later. So they're going to kind of come in one at a time there. And then let's have something stop. Let's have, say, for example, my bass stop for a bar and then come back in again. To make something come back in, click and drag. There we go. And then hold down on the keyboard the Alt key. That's the one that's called ALT. So if I hold the Alt key, it makes, if you see on my mouse there, a little green bubble, which is the copy symbol. So if I now let go of my mouse, I've made a copy. And I can do that with other parts as well. I could have my chord stop for a minute and then come back in, maybe coming back in like this without my piano. So I've got things coming in gradually and then stopping and coming back. Let's just see what that sounds like first, and then we'll have a look at how we can take that even further. Here we go. Here's my track so far.
Under control, out of control. Here's for me to behold. You give me ocean and reason to moan. I'll give you passion and keys to my soul. Which pleases you most? Lying to self is easy for most. The next morning, looked at me, smile with a glare in his eye. There's a limit on the time that we share in this life. Let go and let God handle it. Tell me what it is that you really fear in this life. Sometimes when you have trauma, you think trauma's gonna show up at your door anytime. Call me anytime, lost in my head, more than a sign. Two bodies intertwined, an electric feel right now, cause the energies match. New territory ran.
There you go. So you can hear that when things drop out and then comes back in again, it gives them a bit more emphasis, which is really good in this style. Now I'm going to do, at the moment my drums are going all the way through. I'm going to try cutting out my drums a bit, but sometimes that can sound really good to happen for quite short amount of time. So I'm going to say, right, let's just bring my loop back and let's just happen that it's going to stop just for that one beat here. I know I said I like to do everything on the grid lines, and it's still worth keeping that in mind, particularly when it comes back in again. But having things stop for a short amount of time and then come back in on the grid lines can be great. So I'm going to take this loop, make a copy, use the Alt key, there we go, to create a copy, and I'm just going to go through and have some points where my drums stop. There we go. And at the moment, I'm doing it a bit randomly, but as you go through, you can think about, this is a really good way to highlight certain lyrics. So just certain parts of the track and then bring them back in again. There we go. Let's see what that sounds like with some of the actual drums stopping and then coming back again. Here we go. Let's go from halfway.
You really fear in this life. Sometimes when you have trauma, you think trauma's gonna show up at your door anytime. Call me anytime, lost in my head, more than a sign. Two bodies intertwined, an electric feel right now, cause the energies match. New territory ran, the connection builds, and you have memories attached. Hard to let go. You wouldn't do me like that. Time heals, but the love never died for you. Had to let go of the pride.
There we go. So some of those big ones, you can really hear that, like, it really highlights that lyric because there's nothing else happening. So you can explore and put little gaps in there, which will really kind of emphasize certain parts of your track. Okay, I'm just going to show you a couple more things to add even more variation, and the first one is going to be creating an alternate part for some of these elements we've created, rather than just coming in and out with exactly the same loops all the way for the track. What if I created a different drum beat which came in at some point? So I'm going to do that here. Instead of bringing in the same drums, I'm going to bring in something new. Let's delete it. Let's make a new one. I'm going to use the pencil tool again by holding the command key and draw a new loop here. And I'm going to use the same basic ingredients, which was a kick drum on beat 1, and a snare drum on beat 3. There we go, that's right in the middle. There we go. But this time I'm going to try and add, maybe instead of a hi-hat, so there's this particular pattern which can work quite well, that's used a lot in sort of drill style, which goes like this. So if I'm going to get a snare drum, maybe, let's find one, let's go for that one. And I'm going to put my snare drum right at the start, then I'm going to miss 2, so I've got it on, so I've got 1 there, then blank blank, then the next one, then I'm going to miss another 2 and do it there, then I'm going to do it again from 3, so we're at the start of 3, then miss 2, do a beat, miss 2, do a beat. I will make sure that there's a printout available of that, but have a little listen to what that sounds like, and hopefully you'll recognise a quite distinctive sort of drill type sound. I'm just going to hear it on its own first, so we'll solo it. It goes like this. If I loop it, it's quite loud. Might just turn that down a little bit. Select them, take the velocity down a bit. Let's have a listen. Here we go. And that kind of rhythm, it might sound better on some different sounds perhaps, but that kind of rhythm is a really common drill rhythm. Let's just try it on a clap maybe. Or maybe even on one of these hi-hat type sounds. I'll let you have an experiment with the sound that works the best for you. And you could even try some hi-hats on top of there as well, as we did before. Let's see what that sounds like with a few hi-hats as well. Here we go. It gets quite busy, that one, isn't it? But it might work. Let's see what it sounds like with my drums, with my vocals, and some of my other parts. Let's hear it. Here we go.
I've never died for you. Had to let go of the pride for you. I'm mature, put it all on the line for you. No, you want to hear my truth, I want to hear you.
There we go. So I've got a new little drum loop there, which is sounding quite good. But then what can be really great when you're creating a contrasting section is then go back to the original. So I've made my contrast, my different one. Let's now bring the original back. There's my original one. I'm going to click and drag. Hold the Alt key again. That's the ALT on the keyboard. So I get my green bubble. Let go of my mouse. And then I've got new different drums and then original drums. Let's see what that sounds like as it moves between them, and let's bring back my piano loop as well. Here we go. So
I've never died for you, had to let go of the pride for you. I'm mature, put it all on the line for you. No, you want to hear my truth, I want to hear yours. I'm listening to look at the wabi-sabi lens. So
there we go. So it really it can make it sound like it's gone somewhere new, and so then when we come back to our original loops, we're kind of okay, we've come back to where we know. So the final thing I'm going to show you in terms of variation for these tracks is you don't just have to do new drums, you could do new other stuff as well. Maybe I actually want a new chord pattern here. Let's bring these over and let's just record some new chords. My first one used the chord of A, C and E together. Let's just make sure I've got the right sound selected. There we go. I've just selected the track, so I'm playing the right thing there. I'm playing the pluck strings track. Let's try a different bit. Instead of the A chord, I'm going to this one use the D chord, which sounds like this. There we go. And maybe I'm going to make a new little pattern using the D chord, and maybe I'll go to one more chord, maybe like this, the E perhaps. Something like that perhaps. Let's see what it sounds like over the top of my track. Here we go.
You wouldn't do me like that. Time heals, but the love never died for you. Had to let go of the pride for you. I'm mature, put it all.
There we go. That's it. I played the D chord twice and then the E chord. Again, I've recorded them. You can see them there. Let's select them using my mouse. Let's press Q to get them nice and in time. Let's loop it and let's see what that sounds like over my new drums.
I've never died for you. Had to let go of the pride for you. I'm mature, put it all on the line for you. No, you want to hear my truth.
There we go. And I can even add to that with the new bass line and maybe even a new piano as well. So my new bass line is going to be based on the note D because that was the thing I played. So there we go. There's the note D. That was my main chord. So let's just try playing something using the note D. I'm going to keep it really simple. Maybe just play the note D a couple of times. Let's try.
You wouldn't do me like that. Time heals, but the love never died for you. Had to let go of the pride for you. I'm mature, put it all on.
There we go. What I did that was different to my other one is I held it down for a really long time, whereas in my other one they were quite short. So again, that's just a way of making it contrast. Let's select them all, select the notes, Q, get them in time, and let's see what it sounds like. Here we go.
But the love never died for you. Had to let go of the pride for you. I'm mature, put it all on the line for you. No, you want to hear my truth, I want to hear.
There we go. So I've got my nice bass line underneath, and I could even, if I want to, come up with a new piano part as well. Let's make up something super simple on the piano, nice and high, using the note D or something in the D chord, which is D, F and A. Or make sure I've got my piano selected. There we go. There you go. Maybe I'm just going to try. I'm going to try and improvise and come up with just a short little pattern on the piano. Here we go. Let's have a go.
Hard to let go. You wouldn't do me like that. Time heals, but the love never died for you. Had to let go of the pride for you. I'm mature, put it all.
There we go. I just literally played 3 notes there. I just went ding, ding, ding. And I thought that'll do for my loop. So select them, Q, get them in time, loop it. And now what I've got is I've got in my track this different section, this bit which has got whole new ideas, even though they're using the same instruments, they're using the same techniques, but those new ideas are going to make it sound really different when it goes back into the others. So let's have a little listen to my track as a whole so far, and then I'll just show you one more thing to finish it off. Here we go.
Under control, out of control, here's for me to behold. You give me ocean and reason to moan. I'll give you passion and keys to my soul. Which pleases you most? Lying to self is easy for most. The next morning, look to me, smile with a glare in his eye. There's a limit on the time that we share in this life. Let go and let God handle it. Tell me what it is that you really fear in this life. Sometimes when you have trauma, you think trauma's gonna show up at your door anytime. Call me anytime, lost in my head, more than a sign. Two bodies intertwined, an electric feel right now, cause the energies match. New territory where the connection builds and you have memories attached. Hard to let go, you wouldn't do me like that. Time heals but the love never died for you. Had to let go with a pride for you. I'm mature, put it all on the line for you. Know you wanna hear my truth, I wanna hear yours, I'm listening too. Looking through a wabi-sabi lens, so I get a wabi-sabi view.
There we go. So it sounded like quite different when I went to my new kind of section there. It was quite quick, wasn't it? It came back in with the other one, so maybe I'd want to stay on this new section of the beat for a little bit longer. And this can work really well, actually, if you've got different sections of your song. Like if this was the chorus, that could be really good to make the chorus sound different from the other sections. Okay, lovely. So I've got a track that I'm feeling quite happy with now, but I'm just going to show you one more little thing to try and add in some effects to your song. Now, this is going to be different depending on when you're using the software Garageband or the software Logic Pro, but you can edit the different ideas that you've got in your song and add some effects to them like this. If you're on GarageBand, at the top here you'll see some different controls. There we go, some different things, and this one here, which is the smart controls, have got a few options for editing the effects or tone of the sound. So I've got the piano selected now. Here's the piano. Let's just solo it using the S and see what that sounds like on its own. I'm just going to press play and hear a bit of the piano. Lovely. Now, can you see I've got a few controls here? Let's try turning up the one called delay and see what that sounds like. Here we go. It adds kind of echo to the sound. If I turn up the reverb, that's going to make it even more. Here we go. Let's have a listen. It makes it kind of sound like it's almost like in a big cave. If I turn those down to 0 to get the opposite effect, there we go. It sounds really sort of, you call that dry without any reverb. But I like it with some reverb. Let's turn up the reverb. Let's turn up the delay and have another listen to it. Here we go. Lovely. And you can play around with any of these controls. If I try turning up the highs and down the lows, it'll make it sound quite harsh. But if I do it the other way around and turn down the highs and up the lows, it'll make it sound almost a bit muffled like this. It's quite subtle, those, but you can have a play around. There's also at the top here the EQ settings, which you're very welcome to have a play around with as well and see what they do to the sound. So you can do that on any instrument. I've just done that to the piano part, but I could look at the plucked strings and do the same thing. Every time you select a new instrument, they will often have different settings. So play around with them and see what they sound like. I don't know what this tension setting does, but you can hear a slight, it sort of almost adds a bit of a wobble to the sound. So have a little bit of a play around with those as well. Finally, if you go to your vocals, you can do a similar thing on your vocals. Now, this is where you should see some different controls here if you're using GarageBand. I'm using Logic on my computer. So the way to make this work in Logic is, if I go to the side here, the little panel that says I, the I in a bubble, if I click on this one, I will get the track inspector, which is this bit here, and I can see the sound coming through just down the bottom here. And this is the volume control, actually, which I can turn up and down. I can add effects. You see where it says channel EQ here, there is a little space underneath for adding effects to your song, and if I click on this one, there's all these different effects that I can add. So for example, I could add a reverb, or I could add a pitch shifter, or I could add any number of different things. There's also, which might even be a little bit easier, if I look at the library on the left hand side, some different presets. Let's try using the presets first. If I go to the voice preset and then let's try bright vocal, and then see how that changes the voice. Let's have a listen to it first.
The next morning, looked at me, smile with a glare in his...
Sounds a bit kind of bright, and you can hear a little bit of echo on there. Let's try telephone vocal.
The next morning, looked at me, smiled with a glare in his eyes.
There you go. So that sounds like she's on the phone. And there's various different ones. There's an auto-tune vocal.
The next morning, looked at me, smiled with a glare.
Which you can't actually hear very well as she's not singing, but there is, if you were singing in it, you'd hear a bit of auto-tune there. And there's various others, including some pretty crazy experimental ones like pitch shifting.
The next morning, looked at me, smiled with a glare in
robots, crazy stuff like that. Obviously, you don't want to go too crazy or your track will suddenly sound like we can't hear the words. So you've got to make sure that you are keeping it so that you can hear the track nicely. But sometimes it can be good for like the odd line. So go on, let's finish off by adding an effect on just the odd line. I'm going to take a line of this song by cutting it. Let's just cut it here. I'm going to right click and choose, what's the best way to do this? Okay, I'm going to do it actually using the scissors tool, which I can select up here. So if I go to the pointer tool instead, choose the scissors, there we go, and let's cut out just a couple of words. I'm going to do these words here. There we go, they've got their own little bit. Might be a bit too much. Let's just do a couple of lines here. I'm doing this a bit at random, to be honest, because I don't actually know what she's saying there, but there we go, got a section. I'm going to put it on a new track. Let's make a new audio track. So there we go. I've got all of this is just going to be normal vocal, but on this one, I'm going to put a crazy pitch shifter. So let's go voice. Let's go the experimental section. Let's do monster vocal. All right. Then hopefully for that line, it'll sound a bit different. Let's have a listen. Here we go.
Which pleases you most? Lying to self.
Oh, there we go. That was suddenly, let's hear it on its own.
Which pleases you most? Lying to self.
There we go. And sometimes they'll use that effect on these kind of tracks to just highlight the odd line. So we've got our whole track. We've created all the different parts. We have added and recorded our vocals. We've created some variation by adding some new loops in there. And then we've even played around with a little bit of effects as well. So the final thing is let's save it. Let's save a final copy of our song. So we don't have to open it on Garageband or Logic. We can open it. We can get it at home, send it on via email, open it on our phones, something like that. So to do that, we're going to select the whole song. You see at the top of the screen here, I've got the numbers, the bar numbers. If you click and drag, you make this yellow line. So I'm going to make this yellow line so it goes through the whole song. There you go, have it starting just before the beginning, finishing just after the end. And now I've got the whole song selected. Then from my menu, which you can't quite see at the top, but I'm going to the file menu here and choosing bounce, and then project or section. If that's on Logic, if you're on Garageband, you can use the share menu at the top and choose to share and export your file to disk. So there you go. And it'll look the same when you get there. It will ask you what kind of file you want to make. If it does, choose MP3. It might not do that. It might just go straight there if you're on GarageBand. But I'm going to choose MP3, press OK. And then it'll say, where do you want to save it? Save it to the desktop, give it a name, and then it will save and bounce your track. And there you go. You've got a file which you can then attach to an email and send wherever you like. And there is how to create your own hip-hop track. Now I'm just going to do one more thing at the end of this video, just in case you are interested in creating a track in a slightly different style. Everything I've shown you here is a kind of trap style, modern hip hop beat, but you might be more interested in making something that sounds a little bit more kind of 90s hip hop, a bit more kind of old school. So to do that, let's just get rid of what we've got so far. I'm going to go back to the beginning, and the main thing for making it sound a bit more 90s, if that's your style, is the tempo. 140 is really good for like modern trap style hip hop, but if I choose something like 90 BPM, 90 BPM is going to be quite nice and slow, and I'm going to make a new loop just here. So I'm going to, again, with my command key, use my pencil, click, got my green loop, double click on it, and I'll have my different sounds here. Now, a sort of old school hip hop beat is going to look a bit different. It's going to have a kick on beat 1. Oh, that's a bit long. There we go. A snare on beat 2, kick on 3, snare on 4. And then your hi-hats, rather than being dotted randomly, are going to be a bit more regular every other beat. So I've added them on every other beat there. So this is what that will sound like. Let's have a listen. There we go. So at 90 BPM, that slower speed, and with this kind of layout, it's going to sound a lot more like the kind of original hip-hop kind of beats that you might have got. And you can, again, customize it. Maybe I'm going to add in another kick drum here. I'm going to go add in a kick drum there. Maybe I'm going to add in another snare drum here. Maybe I'm going to add in some more hi-hats, and even the odd little sound on top, if you like. There we go. I've just gone a bit random. Let's see what it sounds like. There we go. Maybe I think it's a bit busy, to be honest, but you can have a play around and add some more stuff in if you like. Let's see what it sounds like now. There we go, quite like that. Let's loop it, top right hand corner. So now I've got, and some of the different drum kits sound better than others for these. So try a few different ones. Something analog might sound a bit nicer. Let's try it. There you go. Try a few. Oh, not that one. That's a bit. Some of them are a bit crazy. Have a little go. Boom bap. That sounds like what I'm looking for. That'll do, lovely. So, and then on top of this, as you go to make your track, you can then just follow all the other instructions exactly the same. I can be using my piano, adding my chords, adding my melody, adding my bass in exactly the same way. But because I've got that slower speed and that different kind of drum pattern, then everything I make will sound a little bit more like that kind of old school hip hop sound. Let's record a chord sequence to see it in action. Here we go. Did a bit of Dr. Dre for you. Let's just, it's a bit low, make it a bit higher. There we go. And loop it. And that's your kind of ingredients for your like older hip hop style. There we go. So there's a little tutorial on making your own hip hop track. Enjoy.